Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for My Hero Academia, Chapter 251. Alright, so the big thing with this chapter is Izuku, Baku, and Shoto coming in with the assist to save Natsuo. And I will admit there was a small aspect of this route that does kind of take the difficulty out of Endeavor's decision, but at the same, but at least that's what I initially thought. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized the fact that it was such a difficult choice for him proves that in the moment, the one the one thing he prioritized more than anything else was the safety of his son, and even more than that, like this with Endeavor, if you really look at his record as a hero and his time as a hero, he's always been faced with. He's always been in a situation where he was faced with either one or two type of situations where he could either fight a villain or pretty much save people. But he was never faced with both of them at the same time. He was never faced with the possibility of needing to save someone over like he was never faced with the possibility of losing of a situation where or you would have to face down a villain while trying to find a way in order to save someone's life. So for him, this was completely new. This was completely new territory, and that he didn't know how he could, and he didn't know how he could solve the situation. How he could save his son. He didn't know how he could save Natsuo in this situation. But by our three heroes stepping in, they could actually do what Endeavor could not. They pretty much, by working together, they managed to save Natsuo and take down the villain all at the same time. In fact, taking it a step further, while the whole scenario and situation itself was risky, this was also the perfect setup for our heroes, because especially Izuku, to apply what Endeavor was teaching them, since it was a situation where they had to think on their feet and think instinctively without actually having much time to actually think. They had to use what Endeavor was trying to teach them about, like subconsciously using your quirk. And with Izuku, that is kind of oddly the biggest. With Izuku, I will admit that this chapter actually exposed that particular aspect as his biggest weakness. Because with Izuku, he's always overthinking things. You can always tell he's always thinking things. He's always thinking on the spot of what's the best way in order to do this. What's the best way in order to do this. But in this case, him thinking through things and him overthinking things is exactly what was blocking him from being able to grasp onto the idea, onto what Endeavor was teaching him about subconsciously like activating both sets of quirks at the same time. The base power, which is the base power of One for All, and Black Whip, and the Black Whip quirk, but in this case, even though he was still thinking, what he did is he basically let his instincts take over in that moment. He let his instincts take over, and by doing that, again, he managed to activate both the base quirk of One for All and both the base quirk and Black Whip. So he was able. So now it was in the appropriate situation that where he knew how to do it. Now the thing is, if he's going to be, now the big thing is how if he's going to be able to do this again, or if he's going to know what exactly he needs to do again in order to use like both of these quirks again in tandem with each other. Of course, Izuku is not the only one who improved, as we also see Todoroki wield Flashfire for the first time, and because this was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing, I imagine the next step for him will be to focus on controlling it. I mean, it definitely appeared like he had control already, but now I imagine the next step for Shoto will basically be will basically like finding a way in order to control it on a constant basis, and definitely to control the power output and how much power he uses with Flashfire, because the big thing about Flashfire is that it is such a we've seen Endeavor use it, and it is a very strong technique. So if Shoto isn't careful in how much of Flashfire he uses at a time, or understands how much power output he needs to use, then yeah, he could severely hurt someone. So that's that's definitely going to be his test, is how he managed to maintain Flashfire for sure. Um, Now, what I'm about to talk about next is really kind of all dependent on how next week's chapter plays out. But the weakest part of this chapter was ending, and ending the villain, because it was ending the villain because if that's the last we'll end up seeing of him, then it's kind of disappointing in the sense where ending was really just a plot device in order to build up this moment. I mean, the last couple of chapters, the thing is for me, the last couple of chapters, he definitely hooked me in as a villain and a character. But this week he was just kind of a villain. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with like Horikoshi had an opportunity in order to establish thoroughly what Endeavor and Ending's connection was, but because we didn't get any backstory this week, he kind of, but because he don't get me wrong, he is still very much he's still very sympathetic in the sense where obviously he's got some demons. He's definitely, but unless we know what exactly caused, he's definitely got some demons and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, but unless we establish what it is that brought him to this point, then he's really just going to be a one-off character that I'll forget about after this arc is done. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to get that next week. We're going to be able to get a backstory or something that shows what the connection between Endeavor and Ending were. But yeah, but if we don't get it, then I don't know. I don't know if I'm really gonna even remember Ending at all after this. Unless he's gonna be Stain, where he's gonna be a recurring character or something. But yeah, I don't know. It really depends, I guess. Now, flip side to that, though, is that of course, but by the end of the chapter, both Natsuo is saved, and we see Endeavor embrace Natsuo and Bakugo unintentionally. So now that'll be an interesting lead into next week. When I think we'll finally be able to see Endeavor and Natsuo start to find some kind of common ground out of this experience. And for Natsuo, this is definitely going to be his starting line for sure, because the thing with Natsuo and Endeavor's relationship up to this point is that Natsuo is far beyond the point of needing a father figure in his life. He's a young adult. He's left home. He doesn't necessarily need he doesn't need a father anymore. But the one thing I think that can be at least somewhat established beyond this point is how much Natsuo is willing to start to form, is how much both the two of them are willing to form a bit of an understanding and respect between each other. That's going to be the key thing for sure going forward. And of course, in Natsuo's case, it's also going to be him deciding how much of his father he actually wants in his life, and work it out from there. Because this is going to be just a matter of a lot of it is just deciding how much of them are willing to kind of just how much they're all willing to kind of see how much can they even get along beyond this point, and how much can they form at least a base respect for one for the other. Now, one final thing I want to mention is the artwork. And it's been a while since I've mentioned that, but for me, a lot of it was very. The thing about the artwork in this is that while a lot of it was very good, and a lot of it was very good and detailed, but yet when it came to the background work, it oddly felt a little too detailed because in terms of the background work, that there were a couple of times, mostly when the background was very dark and whatnot, where it was difficult to make out what was going on because of the dark shading. Like it's one of those times where where there's a bit of a disconnect in the sense where what was happening in the foreground was kind of was a little bit blocked out by what was happening in the background. Like Horikoshi kind of failed to kind of like in order like to properly separate the two in certain points in the story. But so yeah, I don't know what that was about, but yeah, he could have looked that over a little better. But oh well. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Lister Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Enemy, signing off. Later, guys.